Hello and welcome to another Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This is the second of our special episodes, looking at the Euros and how England are getting on, and also covering off any Saints news that might have dropped this week. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and Twitch. So a very good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community, and without you, we couldn't make this show each week. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this evening, Steve Grant, the owner of Saints Web, and literally just back from Germany. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen Cour is writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 283 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we always like to start the show with a shout out to our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support our show. And as I mentioned, we couldn't do TSP without their support. Preseason is always the best time to sign up to be a TSP patron, as you get the full season of TSP membership ahead of you. Plus, it's the best time to join our Patreon exclusive Fantasy Premier League. In addition to the FPL, you get early access to an ad-free version of the podcast. There's a permanent discount in our TSP shop, t-shirts and merch bundles, which we do at the end of the season. You get priority access to any live shows or events that we host throughout the season. There's weekly shouts for patrons in our Francis Benali and Mick Shannon tiers, and loads more as well. Now, if you're interested in finding out a bit more about supporting the podcast each month, head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more information. And of course, you'll find all the links in the podcast show notes and on the YouTube description. So let's start with the latest transfer news and rumours for Southampton. It's been a busy day for journalists covering the club. Alfie, last time we spoke, it was a little bit quiet. You said it was going to pick up pretty soon, and it certainly has today. Should we start with the latest news, I think, which is Charlie Taylor coming in on a 2-year deal after leaving Burnley? That was something that you reported on a couple of weeks ago, and they've got that one over the line.
Yeah, so like I said last time, I think it's just a case of all the club execs and chiefs go on holiday in June, just like I did myself, and then they all come back in the start of July and everything starts kicking off. And for the last sort of 4 or 5 days, it's been absolute non-stop. But yeah, Charlie Taylor comes in, a left back who can also play on the left side of a back three as well. He's a 30-year-old. He's got 150 odd games of Premier League experience, and he's cost the club nothing. So yes, he's been relegated with Burnley. Is it the most inspiring signing of all time? Perhaps not. But he's somebody who I think could do a job. Russell Martin's obviously. When we look at the sort of links and the other players they're going for, I think it's quite clear that Russell Martin is leading on recruitment because it seems to be a lot of people who he knows and loves. Charlie Taylor's not one of those who he's worked with as far as I'm aware, but he obviously trusts him. He's played with Taylor Harwood-Bellis, and I think it's just a bit of experience in the door, I suppose, and somebody who will offer competition to Ryan Manning, which I think we all agreed before the season that that is a position they need to improve. Ryan Manning, he's earned his right to be an option and to be part of the squad, but you couldn't go into a Premier League season with just that. And I think what it does is it just frees up the rest of the pitch, hopefully, to spend a bit more money, because obviously Adam Lallana come in on a free transfer as well. Not any big bucks spent yet, but I've got no issues with sorting out the squad early, getting some free players in. So yeah, Charlie Taylor's a second signing in the summer, and I think that's okay.
Good bit of business for you, Glenn. I think that the defensive signings are going to be quite key, considering how our last season in the Premier League ended.
Mm-hmm. I think it's good from the point of view of it's going down the route that I think it was Dragon Solak kind of promised, that we were going to go for more experience this time around, because you don't want to repeat what happened last time, which was obviously we went for players with an average age of about 13 and got relegated horribly. So it's it's a step in the right direction there. I wasn't inspired by it, as Alfie said, but as long as the money gets spent elsewhere, then happy days. It's a player in a position that we needed a player. He's played 7 years out of the last 8 in the Premier League, so I think it's I think it's a good thing. I read his interview just now. He sounds very enthusiastic, as you always do when you join a new club. But hopefully it will prove to be a decent signing. But I always have the caveat is that obviously you can never tell if it's a good signing or not until a year down the line. So let's see how he goes. But it's a player that we know can play at this level. So hopefully he can fit in and add something.
And someone that should, Steve, be able to fit in with the system because they play a similar way to we did.
Yeah, I mean, Burnley in the last few years, obviously they went complete chalk and cheese in terms of the managers, gone from Sean Dyche for so many years into this sort of new free-flowing Vincent Kompany setup. I mean, quite extraordinary how he's ended up with the Bayern Munich gig. I mean, what an agent! What an agent he has. That is just incredible. Or maybe Bayern Munich are going to be finishing 12th in the Bundesliga this season. We wait and see. But yeah, I think Taylor's versatile. He's played, as Alfie said, he can play at a left back or left side of a three, or probably left wing back. I think. To be honest, I probably suspect that might be his strongest suit. Play it, being able to kind of bomb up and down and put decent crosses in. And yeah, I mean, if we play the system that we successfully ended last season on against two of the better sides in the division, then yeah, we're going to need width and defensive cover. So yeah, decent signing, as Glen says, not cost us anything in terms of transfer fee. So yeah, excellent. Means we can dedicate more money to other areas of the pitch, hopefully. I mean, there's still some obvious gaping holes that need filling pretty quickly, I would say.
Yeah, we'll get on to some of those in just a moment. Alfie, the tweet this morning was Happy Taylor Harwood-Bellis Day, I think, from you, wasn't it? That obviously all getting confirmed today. I mean, the more you think about it, if you just take a step back, officially finalised today, 22 years old, England under-21 captain, a 4-year deal, and he's cost us 20 million quid. It is an outstanding piece of business.
Yeah, like we knew that it was the case all the way back in August last year when they signed him. We knew that if they went up, they'd pay 20 million quid and he'd be theirs. And obviously we've known that for more than a month now since the playoff final, which is crazy, by the way. It's been 6 weeks or 5 weeks since the playoff final. It just absolutely flies by. We'll live long in the memory, of course. And he's absolutely delighted to be here. I'm delighted he's here. He's obviously a good player. He's only going to get better. And I think Russell Martin said in the interview that as Glen's alluded to, these interviews that come out, they're always great. But I think he said that he's ready for his Premier League chance now. And I know he was gutted last year to not get it. He's got it now, and he'll be the starting defender. But they're also going for someone of a similar profile as well. So it looks like they're going to be going for Nathan Wood. They're hopeful that he might be the third signing they make this summer.
This is from Swansea, right? Is this the guy that we were in for last summer?
Yeah, so he was the guy who they were in for last summer before they got Harwood-Bellis. So they brought Mason Holgate in. They wanted one more, and they were hoping it was going to be Nathan Wood. But it obviously ended up being Taylor, which worked fantastic for us. And Taylor probably had a better season than Nathan Wood did in the Championship. But they're going back in for him. He's obviously a young player. He's probably not signing to be first choice, I wouldn't imagine, or I would hope not, because he's not played in the Premier League before. But clearly, as I said a minute ago, Russell Martin's going for players who he knows and likes. I think he signed him to Swansea himself, and he's tried to sign him since. And now he's finally looking like he might get that done. So I think he's, 22 years old as well, 21, 22 years old. I think he played for England under-20 at some point from Middlesbrough. They'll get a sizable fee out of it as well. So yeah, I think that the only question mark it does raise is the future of Jan Bednarek, who hasn't had any links or reports or anything like that. But you do worry with that 12 months left on his deal, that is a little bit uncertain. I think we've seen with Kyle Walker-Peters that the club are probably reluctant to let players get into their last year for a business point of view. So that does worry me a little bit, but hopefully Jan will still be here.
That's a really good point as well, Glen.
Just on Nathan Wood for a second. So as soon as the link got made again, I've got Swansea supporting people in my family in the outer reaches of it. And the first 2 messages I got from 2 separate people were 7 million. I'll drive him there myself. So whether that's anything to go on, I don't really know. But sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's as Alfie said, it does seem that that is Russell Martin that's leading the recruitment, because that was one of our big worries, wasn't it? Who was going to be in charge of that? And as we said, he's getting in the players that he knows, players that he trusts, and some of the other rumours as well, people that he's been working with before.
And it's a bit like back to the good old days, isn't it? Where the manager sort of did everything back in those days that Harry Redknapp used to love, where no one questioned what he was doing. I think
have we topped up our stationery supplies?
Yeah, I mean, the players that are coming in, they all seem to be, including last season, they all seem to be sort of British based. if you like. That seems to be a theme that we're following. You've got to trust the manager to think that Nathan Wood, in this case, is capable of making the step up into the role that's intended for him this season. As Alfie says, that's probably a backup centre half type of thing. I'm fine with that. I do think it's not totally alien to have the manager having input. I mean, you look at some of the ridiculous clubs, like Chelsea, who just seem to sign players all over the place, and there's no thought about who the manager is or whether the manager's even going to be there for 5 minutes. So I think it's interesting as well with Russell Martin being offered a new contract. It's telling the new incoming players this is going to be your manager for this season. So there's no doubt about that, because I always think it must be pretty grim when you sign. I mean, take James Ward-Prowse situation at West Ham now. The manager who signed him, the manager who signed him is now gone, and it's is the new manager going to think you're any good or not? But yeah, James Bree's slightly different situation because he's not very good. But so I'm quite happy with Russell Martin to be leading the recruitment, even though he's never sort of like operated at Premier League level before. But I'm sure we seem to be looking at Celtic player Matt O'Reilly, to come in as well, and maybe that'll be a one of the big money buys that we're talking about. So no, I'm happy enough for that to continue if that's the way we're going to go.
Since Glen's mentioned him, Alfie, the Matt O'Reilly thing from Celtic, obviously there's the link from when I think Russell Martin was his manager at MK Dons. Is there anything in that? I mean, he's clearly someone that we would want in the squad, but I know you were saying today that you think the personal terms might be a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, I think the message at the moment is there's a chance it could happen. There's obviously a hope that from the club and from Russell Martin that they want it to happen. I think what I'm being told is that agreeing a transfer fee with Celtic's not really going to be a problem. I know we've seen sort of 20 million deals floated and valuations of 30 million. I think they could probably find some kind of middle ground in there. That's not going to be an issue. But you've got to remember that Matt O'Reilly, Atletico Madrid bid for him in January and Celtic turned it down. And Kieran Trippier, when he left Atletico Madrid to go to Newcastle, took a wage decrease to go to Newcastle. So I'm pretty sure that Atletico Madrid wages and fees are going to be pretty good. It's a massive club. So maybe the player has in his mind there that's what I could have had in January. I want a similar deal now. And he scored 18 goals for Celtic. I know it's in the Scottish Premiership, and obviously there's a certain tax to that, but he was the club's top goal scorer. They won all the cups and the leagues, as they always do. So he's somebody who can play a couple of different positions in midfield. So yeah, Russell Martin wants him. Whether it will happen or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I think I saw Callum O'Hare linked today as well. So I'm sure he's not the only one that's got on their list. Just like at right back, they want Yukinari Sugawara, who I had never heard of until a week ago, but he plays for AZ Alkmaar. And he's not the only one on their list either. But it's good to see they're being linked with players who are desired. And Matt O'Reilly is somebody who I think a lot of clubs would want. So I think it's going to be one of those where Saints maybe have to wait a bit, or it comes down to the player's choice ultimately. So we'll have to wait and see.
How many pages is your list up to now? Because I know you've been keeping a note, haven't you, of everybody we've been linked with?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting a bit ridiculous for sure. I mean, yeah, there's a couple. I need to add a few more today, actually. Yeah.
We need to talk about Alex McCarthy as well, Steve. Signing that 2-year deal. Does he start for you at Newcastle, or do you think we still need to add somebody else in that department, obviously with Bazunu being out injured?
I mean, personally, I would like us to have somebody better.
Glenn's nodding.
But problem is, he's come in, he's been solid, if unspectacular. And ultimately, finance might dictate that priorities are elsewhere. I mean, I would like to think that goalkeeper and centre forward are basically your two kind of top priority positions for any team, really. Especially one like ours, where kind of both those positions at Premier League level have been kind of under such kind of scrutiny over the past few years, where obviously McCarthy and Forster both kind of took it in turns to be in and out of favour through various injuries and form-related issues. And then, of course, Bazunu got completely thrown to the wolves 2 years ago. Eventually dropped after it was probably far too late, I think, really.
Yeah.
And McCarthy came in and didn't do any better. So it was, yeah, I mean, we're kind of taking our kind of minds back only just over a year, really. And I think everybody would have said, well, I mean, surely Alex McCarthy's played his last game for us, but it's amazing what a little bit of sentiment can do, and also a massive injury to your kind of first choice, in theory, goalkeeper.
And a couple of good performances at the end of the season.
He did. He was calm and unflappable, I think, which was kind of the key in terms of what we needed. I think, in especially that West Brom away game, that was the one that could have been a proper banana skin. But he kind of saw us through that, despite the sort of aerial bombardment, and then we of course came up with the advertising triangles to screw them over in the second leg. But yeah, I would still like to think we're on the lookout for someone a bit more long term, because I mean, you never know. You don't know how Bazunu's going to come back. Even when he's going to come back. We think it's a 9-10 month injury, but could be longer. Could easily be the entire season. And especially if we then have another first choice goalkeeper in, Bazunu's not going to play again. Certainly not this season. So yeah, I think we should probably still be looking for it, but I think with McCarthy getting that new deal, it's probably slipped a little bit down the priority list. Centre forward and centre midfield now are the two, I think.
I think it's one of those where it's quite easy to sort of convince yourself that, all right, okay, you can maybe go without. You've given them this contract a new deal, and then it could go one of two ways. It could be quite dramatically wrong come January, and he's letting in, like say, near post stuff like that. So yeah, it's one that worries me a little bit. But I wouldn't bank on the club getting another one, if I'm being honest.
Were you surprised it was a 2-year deal as well, Glenn? I thought maybe like a 1-year extension.
Not really, because I think from Alex's point of view, at 34, he would have wanted 2 years, because goalkeepers usually go on to the sort of 37, 38, don't they? So I don't think he would have accepted a year. I am interested in what happens with because in theory we could bring in another goalkeeper who would be first choice, and then McCarthy would be number 2 and Lumley would be number 3. And the thought of Joe Lumley keeping goal in the Premier League is not ideal. So, and McCarthy at 34, 35 probably by the end of the season, if he picks up an injury, then it's a little bit of a worry. So I do think they will bring in another goalkeeper. I hope it's I never quite see the point in bringing in players to pad out the squad. I think you've got to bring in a player who can play at first team level. So I think Steve touched on this a few weeks ago, or the end of the season, that you can get a goalkeeper on loan usually. You've seen goalkeepers like Dean Henderson be out on loan before, and so that sort of thing can be done. So it wouldn't surprise me if we went down that route, if we can find a suitable deal from a financial point of view, because obviously you don't want to be, spending £100,000 a week or something on a goalkeeper for a year. So that probably rules out the likes of someone like Aaron Ramsdale.
I mean, I'd imagine someone like Martin Dubravka is probably.
I was going to say Dubravka, yeah, but is he an improvement on anyone else?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think Newcastle fans might disagree with you, but
well, I mean, Newcastle and their goalkeepers are always a little bit weird. They're very up and down, aren't they? Like even Nick Pope was brilliant for a while, and then suddenly turned into a complete liability in the space of about a month. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've been linked with a couple of big signing goalkeepers, haven't they? So yeah, I mean, Ramsdale's not going to happen. He did his apprenticeship at Bournemouth and Sheffield United in terms of relegation battles. I think he rightly considers himself above that now.
Yeah.
But it does kind of take the pressure off then. I guess that's kind of what we're agreeing, that if we get somebody in, great. But if we don't, we've got somebody and we'll see what happens. Another couple of things just to run past you, Alfie, for the latest, because I'm trying to keep on top of it all. Kyle Walker-Peters to West Ham. Flynn Downs the other way. That seems a long time ago now, but that was only last week we were talking about that. Sounds a bit complicated. Do you think there's anything in that one?
Yeah, again, same sort of thing. It may happen, it might not. I think the Saints' point of view, I think they'd be quite happy for it to happen, just simply because. And I've said on the podcast a couple of times, I think we all agreed it's not a groundbreaking revelation that Walker Peters probably going to leave because he's got 12 months left on his contract. Clearly, not going to sign a new one. And he has his own ambitions, and he's worth money to the club right now, and they've got a business mind on. If he's worth 15-20 million, you run that down, you do a Che Adams situation, maybe he contributes, but he's worthless by the end of the season. So I think if they can shave off 15-20 million off of the price of Flynn Downs, I think they probably consider that to be a worthy deal. But as everything with PSR nowadays, it wouldn't be a straight swap because that would have no benefit to the accountants. So you have to pay 20 million each to both or whatever it would be to get the green on the FFP and whatnot.
I mean, I don't know why clubs don't just, if like in this sort of swap incident, it would benefit both teams to say, well, Carl Walker Peters is worth £75 million. We'll pay you. West Ham are going to pay us 75 million quid for Carl Walker Peters, and we'll pay 75 million quid for Flynn Downs as a sort of in exchange.
I hope that there's
everyone's PSR is suddenly sorted.
Don't give anyone ideas. It's already bad enough as it is at the moment. But you're right,
absolute carnage.
Yeah. So that I think basically that is quite a complicated one, and of course with that as well, you've got two different players who you have to make the right personal terms for, and all this sort of thing. So that's the sort of thing I think they would like to happen. I think they'd be quite open for that to happen, but again, we'll have to wait and see. And look, obviously, no brainer. They want Flynn Downs. They're going to try and get him one way or another. Yeah. This is one route they'll explore.
And there's a couple of things in there, Glenn, isn't there, to unpick, in that actually we're talking about like 30 million quid for centre midfielder or someone from Celtic, and we've kind of got the answer under our nose, and that's the one we need to get over the line first. But then also, if Carl Walker Peters does decide to leave, then he would absolutely go with our best wishes, because he stuck around last year, did a fantastic job, got us back to where we need to be, and no one would begrudge him at all.
No, I wouldn't begrudge him at all. He stuck around. He didn't say, I'm too big for the Championship, like Mr. Bella-Kotchap. He was quite happy to drop down and quite happy to play. And we don't really know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but to the outside world, he didn't seem to complain about it. He didn't seem to angle for a move. Maybe he already always had his idea on sort of like getting to the end of last season and moving on. I'd be interested to know if has he indicated that he's not going to sign a new contract no matter what? If he has indicated that he's not going to sign no matter what, then we have to move him on. I think that's just part of life. But no, I certainly don't begrudge him going after the season he put in last year. He probably played. I think he started all bar one of the games. Was it?
Yeah.
Missed Ipswich, didn't he?
Missed Ipswich, didn't he, for unfathomable reason? But he played every other game, and in the main, I think he had sort of 2 or 3 dodgy games where he kind of forgot that he was a defender. But other than that, I thought he was excellent, and he finished the season really strong when we needed him to. And that the performances against Somerville, no other fullback in the league was able to stop him last season, and he stopped him 3 times. So Walker Peters, great player, and if he goes, then that's just one of them things, and we have to move on. And I certainly don't begrudge him going.
At the end of the day, he's one of those players who 2 or 3 seasons back in the second last season of Arsenal, when they were 10th at Christmas or whatever, he's one of those players that had that 10th turned into 8th, 7th, 6th rather than 15th like it always did. He would have still been one of the first names on the team sheet no matter how high you went, sort of thing. So he's absolutely right to have his ambitions to play somewhere else if that's what he wants to do. I agree with Glenn wholeheartedly.
Any news on Che Adams?
No.
I guess he's not been flooded with offers after the Euros.
I've asked the question, and
he's out of contract today, right? So he's no longer our player. So.
Exactly. I've asked the question. I've not got the answer. I saw that Callum O'Hare, obviously the same situation. His contract was out on June the 30th, and I think Coventry announced it this afternoon that he was leaving. So I guess we could still get an announcement at some point soon, but I've not got an update on that. Like you said, his Euros wasn't brilliant, was it? Unfortunately for him, it really was. Not that he had the service, but he didn't do anything with what he had either. So yeah, I guess again, I don't have an answer on that one, so I can only apologise.
Well, at the time of recording, we're none the wiser. A couple of off the pitch bits as well. Steve, you would have been checking out the pre-season training camp, I'm sure, because normally you'll be a shoo-in for heading off and spending a weekend away and watching a few games. But it's going to be behind closed doors, the one in Spain, which is a bit annoying.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, quite frankly, it's saving my bank balance given that I'm
In your relationship.
Well, that too, yeah, that very much.
She had a
too.
word.
Well, I don't know. A trip to Barcelona might have been nice, but yeah, not with football.
How romantic.
Like yeah, I don't think that would have been particularly popular. But no, I do think that the club have got to be a little bit careful with these sort of tours, because you want to obviously get the players away and get them into an environment where they can train and be focused and stuff. But you've still got to remember who are effectively stumping up a fair amount of the cash for their wages. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this behind closed door stuff. It was obviously fine during COVID because you had no choice. But doing it sort of now we're kind of back in the quote unquote normal world. Yeah, I'm not keen on it. And it would be nice if they could kind of try and accommodate people, because people will travel at stupidly short notice for these sort of trips, because it's something a bit different. You go and play different teams, you go and play in different grounds, and you can have a little bit of a holiday alongside it. So yeah, I'd like to see these tours allow fans in, rather than having them sort of 10 a.m. on a training ground somewhere. Although I do fully appreciate that Barcelona in July is probably going to be about 40 degrees. So morning or late evening is probably the answer there.
I expect they'll charge us a few quid to watch it online, though. There'll be a stream somewhere. You will get to go to Eastleigh, though, Steve. Maybe trip to the Swan Centre on the Friday night. That'd be an interesting one.
Good Lord.
The other news as well, Alfie, was, I know you were excited about this, was the new under-21s coach, someone I hadn't necessarily heard of, but someone that's been working with England and the under-19s, and someone from Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I should just say before I go on to that, on the pre-season, there are going to be quite a few games in England, I think, more than we usually have. So there will be an opportunity to go to a few games, couple home, couple away sort of thing, as well as Eastleigh. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame, the behind closed door stuff. And I think I'm still in the limbo bit at the moment where I'm waiting for the club to tell me what I'm allowed to do when I'm out there as well. So I'm hoping they don't try and pull a full blanket and say no coverage, because it's not going to make it for a very interesting sort of tour blog for me if that is the case. But so the Saints Academy, they've obviously Adam Asghar, the under-21's head coach, left the club at the end of last season because of an opportunity up north that was too good for him to turn down for family reasons, really. But they've replaced him with somebody who's got a lot of experience coaching. So Simon Rusk, who's, like you said, he was the England under-19s manager for about 18, 20 months a couple of years ago. He's been working as Nottingham Forest as set-piece coach in the last 6 months. So I don't know how good their set-pieces have been. Maybe Steve or Glen could tell me. But he was part of Gareth Southgate's team in Qatar, doing opposition analysis. He's managed Stockport County, where apparently they're a bit of a hoofball team, which would be very different to what they'll be doing in the academy, I'm sure. But he's also managed Brighton under 23s for 7 or 8 years before that as well. So he's somebody who's a really experienced coach. And I think in terms of, I've been a massive fan of Dave Horseman and Adam Asghar, but this to me just seems like, in terms of experience and what they've done in the game, it seems like a big step. And obviously the danger with that is that if he does a good job in 10 months' time, somebody else will want him. But that's the nature of the beast with the academy. So I think it's a really exciting appointment at a time when they've got good players who've been in that 16 to 17 bracket that we've spoken about a lot, now coming into that 18, 19 where they need to really step up. So they've got somebody who's in charge of that.
It's always worth bearing that in mind, isn't it, when staff leave? We always seem to pull sometimes a bit of an upgrade out of the bag. So I think that's why we're a bit more relaxed about it when some of these people move on. We're going to have to talk about the England team, I'm afraid. England were 90 seconds away from that embarrassing exit before Jude Bellingham produced that moment of genius, I think, to keep us in the tournament. Probably kept Southgate in his job as well, Glenn. I mean, 63% possession, 2 shots on target. It all sounds a bit familiar, but I'll be honest, I nodded off during the game. It was terrible.
I just slumped further and further down in my chair to the point where I was lying down, and it was so bad. It's just so bad. There was just nothing in the performance whatsoever. And then that goal happens. And because I was in my slumped position, I didn't jump up and fall over or anything like that. You just sort of like, oh, we got extra time. Here we go. And then once that goal went in, I knew we were going to win. But even then, we managed to make the last 15, 20 minutes absolute murder by doing going full Southgate and trying to defend the edge of our penalty area. So it was a horrible game to watch with just two brilliant moments in it. I mean, we had a few near misses with like Rice hitting the post and Phil Foden brainlessly getting himself caught offside before putting the ball in the net. But overall, it just the whole game just did my head in. The performance. I mean, what are we? Are we a counter-pressing team? Are we, a front foot team? Are we a high press team? We're nothing. We're nothing. We're a team that has no pattern of play, and we rely on individual players to come up with brilliant moments, and that's got us here because we've been playing teams that are not very good. We've just about got away with it, but if we play like that in the next round, we're coming home. It's as simple as that. We have to play better because you just can't rely on those brilliant moments to happen. But take away the negativity. Won the game. That's what it's about. It's about getting through, and they did. And every sort of pundit that you read or hear says exactly the same thing. Like we have nothing, but we've managed to win, and it's just a trying experience being an England fan. I mean, I don't know how Steve and the guys who go regularly to the game. I don't know how you, full respect for doing it. Being a Saints fan and an England fan, Steve, you deserve some sort of medal. And yeah, it's. But when it all goes well, it's when you win the games, there's always that hope that they're going to turn up against Switzerland and play a lot better and look like a cohesive team. But I wouldn't put money on it at all.
Steve, I wasn't joking when I said you've literally just got in. Have you? You've just got back from Germany. I mean, how was it for you in the ground? Because at the end, everyone was singing "Sweet Caroline" and filming videos, and obviously limbs when Harry Kane's goal goes in. So, what was it like for you being there and watching that one?
I mean, it was mostly awful. Let's be honest. Yeah, and yeah, there just didn't seem to be anything. There was no energy, no cohesion, and even the good player, even the best players that we know that we've got, these world-class players. I mean, Kane's basically done nothing all tournament, and yet somehow he scored 2 goals. Bellingham was completely anonymous for pretty much the entirety of the game until that 95th minute incident. But that's I mean, he's been doing that all season for Real Madrid. I think that's 6 injury time goals that he scored this season that have been deciders in games. So either an equaliser or a winner.
2 of them were in El Clasico, weren't they? So.
Yes, yeah. Both El Clasicos decided by him in injury time, which is pretty extraordinary. Clearly a guy for the moments. Although maybe grabbing his bollocks while he was running back, gesturing at the bench may not have been the wisest move because it looks
that
like
might come back to haunt him.
Yeah, UEFA seem to be taking a dim view of it, which is strange, given that Cristiano Ronaldo did more or less the same thing 5 years ago and basically got away with it. But hey ho, that's what Cristiano Ronaldo does in his life. But yeah, the atmosphere was just bizarre. It was supportive for the most part, but then there were these little pockets where things like we'd have like a 5-minute spell where we looked as if we were vaguely getting our act together, and then a move would break down, and then you kind of get a little bit of that sort of slump in the sort of mood in the fan base. And I mean, there's a lot of people there who are not shy of voicing their opinion. Let's be brutally honest. And I think given what the team has served up in a lot of these games against pretty mediocre opposition. Let's be brutally honest.
Yeah.
I mean, even Denmark are crap. Let's be fair. They beat San Marino 2-1 a year ago. They're nothing special themselves. And yeah, we've kind of stumbled our way through. Defensively, actually, weirdly, until last night, we've looked fine. Last night, suddenly we looked all at sea. Carl Walker seemed to forget.
Walker, my word.
Yeah, I mean, for all that Trent Alexander-Arnold rightly gets kind of panned for looking a little bit suspect defensively, that performance from Carl Walker last night was just extraordinary. And you just think, I mean, like you get in at half time, and Southgate could easily have made all 5 of his subs at half time. You could have basically been that dramatic and just said, right, nuclear option. Going to take both fullbacks off. Going to take Foden off. And yeah, you could have done a couple of others as well. Could have even have taken Kane off, really. For all the impact.
Tony on.
Yeah, I mean, given what Tony then subsequently did when he did when he was on, that's exactly the sort of role that you want your centre forward doing when you're a goal up, because I think he won 4 free kicks in his half an hour on the pitch, and it just released so much pressure. Like the ball stuck to him. Whenever we cleared anything, he was there. He was winning the ball, keeping it, and either bringing someone else into play, or he was getting fouled and he was winning a free kick, and that then wasted a little bit of time. I thought Konza was good when he came on. So that, I mean, personally, I would just bin off the idea of Trippier now that it's not working. It's far too predictable, and I mean, Konza's right-footed as well, but at least maybe he might, or Gomez, because obviously with Gehi being suspended, which is a pain because he's been our best player.
Really good. Yeah,
he's been our best player all tournament.
And that was totally down to Trippier.
Yes, yeah, he gave him a proper hospital pass. What was that? 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
And he's then on a sort of treading on eggshells for the remainder, which is frustrating, especially given the way that ref was handing out cards in the first 25 minutes. I thought there was absolutely no way we were ending 11 aside, but somehow they managed it. But I mean, in terms of the fan base, I mean, they'd already turned in injury time, because when that substitution was made in the 93rd minute, that prompted a load of "you don't know what you're doings," which we've not had before under Southgate, I don't think. And I mean, as it turned out, maybe he did know what he was doing, but I don't know whether it was by luck or judgment. But Tony just being there was a distracting force from that throw-in. And then he did what you want your centre forward to do for the whole of extra time, really.
Yeah.
So I mean, taking Foden off, I mean, that should have happened way before. I mean, I think he's a fantastic player, but you can't put him and Bellingham in the same team, I don't think.
It's the new Lampard and Gerrard, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
It's looking
well,
that way.
and also Bellingham has already justified his place in the team because he's contributed. Phil Foden has done precisely nothing in an England shirt. So therefore, I think you've got to. I mean, Southgate probably won't make the call on Saturday, I wouldn't have thought. But whoever, I mean, let's be brutally honest, Southgate is done after this tournament, you would think.
Yeah.
Whoever takes over, their first job is going to be right, Phil Foden, you're sat on the bench. Sorry. Until you demonstrate that you can help the team out in some way and show the form that you show at club level when you're in an England shirt and when you're alongside Bellingham, who ultimately plays that position a lot better than he does. Then you've got to take a bold approach, and you've got to be brave with that decision. And it's going to be an unpopular selection, obviously, but until he can demonstrate that he's able to do it, then Bellingham's got the shirt.
Do you think, Alfie, we just got to accept that this is how we play with Southgate? The plan is obviously defend deep, keep the ball, and then try and win it with a moment of class. And I hope to God that Bellingham or Kane gets the goal, because it's not pretty to watch. And it just seems to me that we don't really know as a team what they're trying to do, or there's not that identity.
Yeah, I mean, I accepted that weeks ago. I think coming into the tournament, I think it was pretty obvious that's what we were going to do. And I listened to Gary Neville on Sky Sports today, and he sort of made the case for and against it. And, you know, there's arguments that it's not the worst thing to do in the world. Obviously, I completely agree with Steve that we are going to have a change in direction after this tournament. I think even if we win the tournament, which obviously we're going to have to improve a lot to do, I think Gareth Southgate will walk away as a winner rather than a loser, but he won't stay again, because I think this tournament has probably been such a tiring process for him.
He's not enjoying it, is he? You can tell.
Exactly. And you can actually see the relief on him when they scored the goals, and it was the same sort of relief I had in the pub. So I wasn't ready for it to end at this point. But I mean, the biggest thing that me and Steve have spoken about this in a group chat with Glen a little bit, is the difference in the way that we're playing out. I understand the limitation on the left side, because Trippier's coming back in every single time, and you don't really have a willing runner on that side either. But we've seen for 6 years under Gareth Southgate that when you have these back two, Harry Maguire is more than willing to step into midfield. He sort of breaks that first line, and then you have someone like Declan Rice. They move a bit further forward, and all of a sudden you're higher up the pitch. But right now, all we're having is Rice, whoever it is, just come back and receive the ball off the centre backs, and then they've got the whole pitch in front of them. There's no movement. There's nothing in front of them. But we've seen John Stones do that for Man City for half a decade. So I can't understand why they haven't just tweaked that, so that John Stones is the one that's now breaking in and stepping into midfield and just making things happen in front of him, giving Rice an option to run off on. So, yeah, there's obviously big problems in the way that I think they're playing out, and that's what's causing the issue. And at the end of the day, teams have a right to be good at football. The opposition, although they're average, they have a right to be in the game and to have a chance. So I don't think you're guaranteed to win every game 2-0. We are still in the tournament, which everyone keeps saying, but we have to improve. We have to improve massively. And yeah, I think I agree with Steve that Gareth Southgate has sort of, in this occasion, lucked himself into a managerial masterclass in the last minute of the game, because I'd have taken Kyle Walker off about half an hour ago, and it was his throw-in that, obviously, his long throw that led to the equaliser. Bringing Tony on, I mean, I wouldn't have seen the point of that with a minute to go. And like I said, he impacted in both goals. I mean, he had Eze playing left back at one point, and he made an unbelievable clearance on the goal line to keep it. I just think everything that was a little bit weird just seemed to work. So yeah, I don't know what the solution is to the Trippier thing, because I think Trippier went off injured as well, didn't he, Steve? So we'll have to see whether he's fit or not. But if he isn't, I mean, I don't want Joe Gomez playing. I think that was a pointless take. I don't think he will play. If I'm being honest, I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to be any better than Kieran Trippier at what he's doing. But you're going to start a quarter-final of a tournament with Bukayo Saka left back? I mean, just because Ian Wright said it on the TV, and that's a bit.
Well, surely Fatty's fit by now.
You think Luke Shaw comes in, do you, Glenn?
No, he won't, because if he was going to play, he would have played the second half of extra time yesterday. If he's not ready to play 15 minutes at the end of a game, yes, I get there's a lot of jeopardy involved in the last 15 minutes of a game when you're 2-1 up. But, they, as you said, they had Eze playing left back. I know they moved him eventually, and when they brought Konza on. So I don't think we're going to see Shaw this tournament, to be honest.
Which makes it even more bizarre that he's gone every game that goes by. Makes it an even more strange decision to take him in the first place.
I'm willing to make a bet with Glenn now that we do see Shaw for 20-30 minutes on Saturday. I'm willing to do that. I think we will.
You think so?
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, Jordan Pickford, look, you obviously can't trust really a player, what we say in press, but Jordan Pickford this morning said that Luke Shaw is ready to play now. He was ready to play yesterday, but they decided to not put him on. So I don't think he's going to start, and he's not the solution right now, but I do think we'll see a bit of him, and I hope we do.
I mean, Trippier looked injured when he went off, but at the end of the game, he was jumping around celebrating. So I don't think he's that badly injured. I think he'll be, he'll certainly be available to play. It's just a case of whether he gets picked or not. And with Southgate being who he is, I am pretty certain that Trippier, unless he genuinely can't play, will be playing. I just don't see him changing.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's one change, and that's Gay out, because he has to be out for Konsa.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised by that. And I would have said that Gordon in for Foden seems like the obvious thing to do, but then he didn't come on at all. So that doesn't feel like he's going to do that now. And is Eze going to come in for the start?
Cole Palmer's probably the player that has to come in if they're going to freshen up the attacking side of the attacking side of things. So I thought Eze was good when he came on. But I think Cole Palmer will be first in line. It's just a case of whether they decide to bite the bullet on Foden or not.
I'd be intrigued to hear Steve's take on Kobbie Mainoo, though, because I know obviously you've been a little bit reluctant to sort of welcome him into the team with open arms, sort of thing. But what do you think of it? Because he offers a bit more balance, and I think he's so raw, but he's clearly quite brave in the way he takes the ball in tight areas, surrounded by 3 or 4 players, and he always seems to get out, which is something that does help you actually beat that bank of 4 every time.
Yeah, I mean, just having that that little bit of movement helps. I mean, one thing that was really bloody annoying last night was obviously from where we were behind the goal, you get a decent tactical view of things, and you can see the pockets of space that players are moving into and the passing sort of lanes, if you like. And the number of times that Mainoo moved, him and Rice, the number of times either one or both of them moved into a space, and Stones or Gahey refused to pass through the lines to them.
Yeah.
And both of them were in loads of room. They had so much space that you make that one pass and you've basically taken 3 Slovakian players out of the game.
But they must be told not to do that. Then they must be. That must.
They've done it for 6 years under Gareth Southgate, so I don't believe that at all.
No, I'm kind of.
I don't think they trust Mainoo, basically.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if it's that. I don't know if. I wonder if they trust themselves.
I think the pressure's getting to them big time.
Yeah,
this is a tournament.
They're now well, I mean, they're not as we speak, but certainly pre-tournament, we were the bookies' favourites. And like in the past, we've gone into tournaments like 2018. There was no expectation on us. It was like, right, okay, well, we'll finish second in the group, and then we'll lose in the last 16 to Colombia or whoever. And even Euro 2020 with theoretical home advantage, that was a tough group that we thought we had, with the Czech Republic. I mean, lesser about Scotland, but Croatia, Czech Republic and Croatia. That was a difficult group on paper, and we got through that. And then you get Germany, and then you get Ukraine, and then you get Denmark, and then you get Italy, and that wasn't a tournament that I think people thought beforehand that we would win. I think people thought, well, quarterfinals, maybe a semi, but if you get a nice looking draw. But a lot of the fancied sides got dumped out pretty early in that one. And it's only really here. I think Qatar we were genuinely good.
Yeah, we just got unlucky with one game.
Yeah, one game. That game could have gone either way. We were the better team, I thought, for the vast majority of that France game. Yeah, and I think if we'd won that game, we'd have won the tournament.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe
just the momentum of it. No, I didn't think Argentina were any good at all. It was that was all pumped up media nonsense that he was some sort of wizard. It was just he was getting like. Anybody who would breathe anywhere near it.
Yeah,
that's a free kick. That's a penalty. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But we would have been no different. Go on.
I got one more question about yesterday. This is for Steve. What was it like in the ground when England executed that perfect free kick where Walker passed it straight to their player with Pickford mild goal?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think it Stones that he was passing it to.
Yeah,
he wasn't paying attention.
Stones wasn't watching.
Yeah. I mean, on the TV, Steve, we didn't see it. It just cut to the ball almost flying towards the goal randomly. We don't know what's going on. But I want to actually question who was it that took the free kick, because I thought it was Bellingham, because it looked like it was Bellingham that was basically trying to get the game restarted really quickly, and he knocked it to Stones, thinking, well, I'll just get a quick little give and go, and I'll be on my way.
Yeah,
and obviously Stones wasn't looking, and actually that guy should score.
Yeah.
International professional footballer, open goal, keeper's 40 yards out. You've got to score that. And I mean, if it's 2-0, we got absolutely no chance there.
Done, aren't we?
So
Yeah.
what was the reaction? What was the reaction in the crowd at that one? Because I just thought that must have been hilarious.
I mean, it was bizarre because I mean everyone's obviously kind of sort of spitting feathers of varying sort of anger levels, but it was odd. It was like, because at that point you can't blame that on Gareth Southgate. And that was what everyone was trying to pin everything on Southgate previously. But that individual moment, you can't pin that on the manager. That is an individual doing something so utterly brain dead
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't blame anyone apart from the individual, and that's when you kind of have this thought of, oh my God, the heads have gone here. This is basically Iceland Mark II.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it was actually worse than Iceland, I would say.
Yeah.
Apart from obviously the end result, and actually, in fairness, we did kind of actually come vaguely strong in the last 10, 15 minutes with the Kane header that he put wide, the Rice shot that they hit the post, and Kane's rebound, which I kind of thought he should have headed that. And then obviously we do then get the equaliser. So I think that was partly Slovakia were knackered. I think they were done with about an hour on the board. But they found the second wind in extra time once we went ahead. Partially because we let them back into it, maybe. But I thought first half of extra time we were pretty good. But that's on a very sort of relative level compared to what had gone the 90 odd minutes before. I did like on the score on the big screen, by the way, that obviously the equalising goal was on 95, and the goal that put us ahead was on 91.
Yeah. And I know we're getting into sort of the 8 p.m. kickoff, but I did want to touch on the pressure thing that I was saying about again, because I think it's pretty obvious that they're trying to do this some kind of siege mentality attitude within the squad, and I think this is something totally different to what we've been used to in the last 6 years. But I mean, how many players have come out and referenced? It was Jude Bellingham yesterday, who I may have even said on the last pod that I think he's going to have his David Beckham mark at some point, where he's the nation's most hated individual because we don't like confidence or arrogance as it comes across. But I mean, he said that the rubbish.
Who else?
Yeah, I mean, who else when he scores? Outrageous, isn't it? I mean, pure adrenaline. But I mean, Declan Rice. Yeah, exactly. But Declan Rice come out and said the same thing in terms of criticism. Harry Kane obviously had that sort of public. It's not a spat, but he answered back to Gary Lineker's criticism. And then Gareth Southgate, he showed the England players before this game something that a Slovakian player said in the press about the fact that they're not together as a team. They're not unified, and they can get out of them that way. And he showed them that apparently in the dressing room to say, look, this is what they think of you. And I think it's notable that this is the sort of route we're going down, and there really is very little goodwill left. Only a tournament win now, I think, can save it. But if the players want to knuckle in and do it that way, if that's what motivates them, then go for it. But I just think it's something notable that we've not seen before.
Have you seen any pundit say anything that was out of order? I haven't.
I felt that the BBC reaction to the Denmark game was over the top at the time. I did think that over the time, but they've obviously ended up being proven right by the successive performances that followed. But I did think it was over the top at the time. We were top of the group. We drew our second game, and it wasn't the worst we've ever seen
against the hardest.
Yeah,
that was the hardest game we were going to have.
Yeah, and we had 15 minutes of analysis on why Harry Kane should be playing for England, and I was sat there thinking, like, "Whoa, come on!"
Oh yeah, that was bizarre.
So that's what I think. That was my thought. But then
a lot of airtime.
Michael Richards and Rio Ferdinand, wasn't it? Yeah. Not
Thomas Frank just sat there in the middle thinking, well, I'm glad these two aren't on my coaching staff because they ain't got a fucking clue.
There's a lot of airtime to fill, isn't there? A lot of podcasts, a lot of newspapers to fill. We have gone from, we were favourites to win the tournament, and now we're second favourites to win the game at the weekend. But we'll see. Before we finish, I just want to do who's impressed you the most? Who do you think is going to go on and make the final, Steve? You've seen more games than any of us.
I don't know. I mean, Austria and Switzerland have both been good, but I do wonder whether they've got it in them to actually go far in the tournament. It's very different impressing in group games and, I mean, in Switzerland's case, against an absolutely pathetic Italy in their round of 16 game. It's a very different thing going deep in a major tournament, and neither of those sides have ever done it. So, yeah, I don't know in that sense. I mean, I'd rule out the Dutch, to be honest. I don't think defensively they're a mess. I mean, the goals they conceded against Austria were absolutely pathetic. So yeah, I mean, from our half of the draw, there's not a huge amount to look at, which is
Go
why
on, say it.
it's coming home. Which is why actually the fact that we've been so god awful to watch for the most part, it's weird that it's still, there's still got to be some level of confidence there that we can still get through these games, because what you see from the opposition, yeah, I mean, they're better organised than we are at the moment. That's absolutely clear. But in terms of ability, if our players turn up and they play, then nobody in our half of the draw should be able to live with us. But problem is we haven't been putting those performances in. And that's not just the manager, that's down to the individuals as well. I mean, individuals got to take a bit of personal responsibility themselves as well, rather than just letting the manager take all the stick. Second half, the other half of the draw looks fairly brutal. Germany showed against Switzerland actually that they can be got at if you're willing to attack them. Denmark looked reasonably decent against them and before the storm hit. So I don't think they got home advantage, which obviously counts for a fair bit. But they've got Spain next, and I mean, if Spain can combine the kind of the play that they've been putting together with actually sticking the ball in the back of the net, which they finally obviously managed to do last night against Georgia. Like the Italy game, I mean, that by anybody's sort of reasonable metric should have been 5 or 6-0. It was that one-sided, but they only scored one. And it was an own goal. I mean, own goal's been doing a roaring trade in this tournament. It's been incredible, hasn't it?
Speaking of own goals, Alfie, France have stumbled through as well. I mean, I dread to think what the French podcasts and media are saying.
Well, they're the same as us, aren't they? They're a collection of incredible footballers managed by a tactically limited manager who kind of has previously fostered a squad where people actually wanted to give the time of day to each other. Because I mean, it's basically since pre-Deschamps that France used to have their annual, every single tournament they'd
meltdown.
They'd have an absolute meltdown on the training ground. Someone would get sent home.
Patrice Evra, whatever it is.
It'd be an absolute shit show. But he's kind of galvanized them and got them together, and it looks as if he's kind of reached the same point as Southgate in terms of perhaps kind of reaching the end of the line, and they need a bit of a refresh as well.
Refresh as well.
So this is a guy who actually wins tournaments.
One.
One.
One. I mean, I look at obviously the winner of Spain and Germany. To me, looks like it would be the favourite. But at this point, it's pointless predicting because the French could turn up at any point, just like we could. And Portugal have got a good squad as well, even though they always tend to do not as well as everyone thinks they should. They've got a brilliant squad. So that other half of the draw is ruthless. But we should be in the final. I think that's the expectation that I've set myself now for Gareth Southgate, and not that he gives a shit what I think, and for this team.
Well, he might.
He might. Well, to be fair, I might well be one of his last remaining supporters at some point soon.
He's referenced every other journalist.
Yeah, he probably should start caring. But yeah, I set myself the minimum expectation now. We get to the final, and I'll be relatively satisfied as a fan. But we have to get to the final in our half of the draw.
So if we get to the final, Glenn, who are we going to face?
I have zero expectation of getting past Switzerland, and if we do, I'll have zero expectation of getting past Austria. I have absolutely zero expectation of. But if somehow we manage to bundle our way through, I think we'll end up playing Spain. Spain looked terrifying.
I mean, are we going to have a 16-year-old kid?
That could be a bloodbath.
Are we going to have a 16-year-old child as player of the tournament? Is that genuinely a possibility? I mean, maybe Rodri.
Well, he can't score goals, can he? If he adds goals to his game, that your foul, is it? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. But Nico, the one weakness Spain have got is Morata up front, and that's probably the reason why they don't score the goals that they should. But they look terrifying when they attack.
Refreshing to see two wingers just go for it constantly.
Yeah, I was
very un-Spanish as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I watched their game against Georgia, and I know it's Georgia, but they were playing in a low block, basically. You know, I mean, it was funny when they scored because it was like literally the first time they'd got in their half. But it was a lesson from Spain of how to play against the low block, using the wingers, hugging the touch lines, then basically running headlong at the defence, committing defenders. It was marvellous to watch, and they were brilliant. Whilst it was funny while Georgia were ahead, I was, from a football purist point of view, it was nice that Spain got over the line because they were just so good. I look forward to watching them against Germany because it's always funny seeing the Germans get hammered, especially at home. One of my favourite games ever was when they lost to Italy in the semi-finals, what was it,
Oh,
2006?
2006,
Yeah.
At home. It's just marvellous game to watch that was. So, yeah, and I was spitting feathers with all the VAR nonsense that Germany got in their favour.
Let's not get into that. We ain't got time.
Against Denmark.
English officials again.
Yeah,
We'll save that for another week, shall we?
And at risk of getting a bit tinfoil hat, there's no way on this green earth that those decisions would have been given the other way around.
Yeah, correct.
No way. No
Even
way.
Mike
So
might be wrong.
that was horrible. So I hope Spain horribly dismantle Germany. Someone else can knock France out, and we'll have a Southgate tactical masterclass in the final against Spain. And it's coming home.
You heard it here first. On that note, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. Don't forget you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. We're at Total Saints Pod on there. Check out the merch store as well, shop.totalsaints.co.uk. Some nice new pieces being added there all the time. We're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And each of the tiers comes with different perks, including the weekly shoutouts for all the patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tiers. So thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe and Mike E. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrop, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood and Anthony Thompson in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you to Alfie. Thank you to Glenn. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll be back soon with another TSP. Have a good week.